Hello there, and welcome back to The Disconnected. I am here with Heather Drain, who has contributed to a number of releases, especially recently, that people are getting their hands on. Heather, thank you so much for taking the time to come on.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me.
My sister's name is also Heather, and I feel like that name is not as common as it used to be, so it's always nice to see somebody with that.
We're the last of a dying breed.
It certainly feels like it. Heather has contributed to all kinds of stuff, including up to this afternoon, getting an announcement for a Cauldron Films release that you were on.
Yes, I'm so excited. The news is out. Talking about, got to do a commentary track for Frankenstein 80, which is completely Berserkers, Italian horror. That was so nutty and fun to do. And I just have two words for you: scrotal transplants.
Let me pause this and go pre-order.
Yeah, right. Like, I don't even think they need to mention any of the supplements. Just like, guys, Frankenstein, scrotal transplants. You know what to do.
Frankenstein alone, that should be enough to get most people that are into these types of films. There's so many different versions of it. I mean, this isn't even the first one we got this year. Arrow did the one from the 90s in 4K earlier this year.
Which I need to get.
Yeah, same here. I'm still behind.
I know. I'm about ready to start like selling some organs at this point. Just be able to afford some of these releases.
I've always had a full wall behind me. I'm reorganizing right now because I had no space, so I'm trying to take care of some of that.
I've got like a shelf kit in our living room right now that I need to assemble because we are it's starting to look like a movie and bookstore and a music store have exploded all over the house. It's nuts.
It is a problem that many of us share. One of the other releases that just came in that you are a part of, we have this Vortex release.
That actually, I know I'm listed on that. I did not contribute to it.
Oh, damn. I literally just got mine in, so yeah, I haven't even been able to open it yet.
I would have loved to, but I think there was like a misprint or something. Now there is an upcoming release that
Jane by Charlotte.
Yes. And you're now officially you may have to co-manage my life here with the great Bill Ackerman of supporting characters. He got the managerial job first. I cannot pay you guys in money because I'm a writer, but I can pay you in love and glory. So.
That's enough. That's tend to be what I get paid for anyways, because it doesn't work out any other way. There's all kinds of stuff that you've been a part of recently. One of the ones I'm most excited for, though, is Dr. Caligari coming out.
Yes, you and me both.
How involved in that one were you? What can you tell me about Caligari?
Oh, my goodness. Well, my journey with the career of Steven Sadian goes way back to when I was like a kid, and our local library had a copy of Danny Peary's Cult Movies 3, which is a wonderful tome, and it had a chapter on Cafe Flash. And even though one of the pages was tore out, because this was for any younger, anybody that grew up with the internet, this will probably not connect with you. But there was a time and place where especially smaller town kids were very desperate for nudity. And so any hint of boobs or nipples in a book, sometimes those pages would end up missing at the local library. And that is exactly, I think, what happened. But even with just reading like the partial chapter, it always stuck with me. And I always was like, even though, I was like 12, I think 11 or 12, I obviously had no knowledge of like the more adult end of cinema. And, right. But there's something about the story and just the description of the visuals that always stuck with me. And years later, I get to my mid-20s, I finally am able to get kind of my hot little hands on some of Steven's films. And the thing with Dr. Caligari, it's been out of print. It had a VHS release way back in the day. It was, of course, released initially theatrically, but that's been it. It was on a gray market DVD, which was not a release approved by Steven, that you had to go through a legit porn site. And Dr. Caligari is rated R. It's not adult. It's not explicit. Right. I mean, it's adult in the same way that maybe like Midnight Cowboy is adult. Like, it's not made for children, but it's not like there's no like actual explicit sex in it. But so to have this release, and especially the remastering, which all of this, we have to give major credit to Daniel Bird, who has done such a great job with helping restore and keep the legacies alive for filmmakers like Valerian Borovchak and Andrei Zulawski, and now Steven Sadian. And Daniel is one of the good guys. Like, he doesn't just do great work; he is a good human. And I, over the years, have been very, very, very lucky to get to know Steven. And like, Steven's a great guy. Like, he's a genius. This man is a legit genius. And he is the most humble human being. Like, this man whose imagination and mind has come up with some of the, like, and if you've seen any of Steven's stuff, Cafe Flesh, Night Dreams, Dr. Caligari, Party Doll Go-Go, any of the stuff he did for in his era of Hustler, I mean, you could tell, like, this, there's no other cat on the planet like Steven Stadium. And when I saw Calgary, like, after reading about it, and I actually back in the day tried to order it from that janky, dirty site, and they wouldn't ship it to me because I'm from Arkansas. And but what's weird is when I bought Cafe Flesh, I had no problems. It was a different seller. So a little weird, right? And but that was an actual official, at least, release. Though, I mean, not that most ideal release, but it was legal, not this like gray market stuff. But Dr. Caligari is just like, I mean, it's sort of a loose sequel, you could say, to the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, the classic German expressionistic film. But it's, the film is a gift for the eyes, but it's a gift for the mind too. There's all kinds of great subversive cultural commentary in it, amazing acting, great soundtrack, some dialogue that will worm its way in your sweet little brain, and you'll just want to hug it and quote it consistently. It's just the perfect cult movie.
It's got such a quirky look too. It's one of those things that the moment you see it, you just want to like be in that thematical area for a while, just to sort of ingest it as part of your life. It's one of those things that I am still like not believing that it's going to be here until it's in my hands. I am so stoked that Jared and everybody has been able to do this. Not to mention, it seems to have been pretty damn successful. I think they're on the verge, or did just sell out of the limited edition finally. And they've been killing it over there this year at Mondo Macabro.
Oh my gosh. Well, and I love those Mondo Macabro do such beautiful work, like Jared and Pete Toombs, which, I mean, for all of us weirdo film people, Pete Toombs like wrote one of our Bibles, with his book of Moral Tales, and of course Mondo Macabro. But they did great. I will say my essay is only in the limited edition release. So for any of you latecomers, I'm sorry. I don't know. Message me. I'll send it to you. I don't know. I'm very proud of it. So, but it's a pleasure to be in. I love Steven is my favorite director. I mean, I've been working on a book off and on for years about his art, and he's just, I think he's one of the most compelling American filmmakers and artists that have come out in the last 100 years. I mean, he's one of a kind.
So these contributions, you've done quite a few. You've done a lot of written essays. You're doing some commentaries now. How did you originally get into that whole industry? Because everybody seems to have this weird, unique journey to get into contributing to some of these releases.
It's always for me, it's been a mixture of, because I've been a film writer for several years now, and I started off writing for some very cool zines and that was after the zine movement was gone, but they're the real passionate, the strong, the warriors of the zine movement, and then I wrote for a site called Cult Cuts, and then Video Watchdog, Dangerous Minds, and so on. And so that helped kind of definitely get me out there. Just that's the thing I always tell anybody, how do I get to A, B, or C? Get yourself out there, get your work out there. Don't be stalkery about it, don't be obnoxious, but get your work out there and just do it the best you can. Make it yours. Don't worry about trying to be like anybody else, because that is a failure in the spirit and and certainly the career. I'm trying to remember what was the very first supplement I did, because there's a few that I've gotten because some of them I've been very lucky, because when I did I got to co-commentate releases like Demons and Toys Are Not for Children with the great Kat Ellinger, and those two were in Times Square too, because Kat was Heather, come on board. And I'm like, hell
Right.
yeah, of course, a few others, like I did an audio commentary for Cecil Howard's Firestorm, released through Distriprix. And that was
Yep.
one where Stephen Morowitz, who runs it, who's a great guy. I mean, him have known each other for years. He knew how much I love Cecil. I've written about Cecil's stuff. And he was like, do you want to do the commentary? And I was like, that's only on my bucket list. Yes. Yes, please. With Calgary, like I knew Daniel and I know Stephen, and I've been writing about Stephen's work, not just on the book, but just in articles for years. I mean, going back to like mid 2000s. Like
Wow.
I wrote about Cafe Flesh for like a Little Rock paper. Like, so like very ride or die here. So it depends. Like each one's a little different. Like some have been because someone attached to it's been very generous, like Kat.
Yeah.
Others have been because I've known somebody. I think with Frankenstein 80, part of that, Chris, I know like the guy, like I love Diabolic DVD, and everybody, if you're a cult film person, please go through them. They're wonderful people, and their inventory is ridiculous. Like, oh my God, it's obscene the amount of money like you can spend on the but they actually had some people on Twitter. They put out a call asking people, who do you guys think you want to see more in the supplemental realm? And some very, very kind people that I totally did not pay, because again, I stress I'm a writer. I mentioned my name, and they reached out and they were like, would you like to do Frankenstein 80? And I was like, yes, of course. And so it's just like that. It's sort of like case by case. Sometimes it's, rooted in stuff I've written about previously. And so they're like, oh, I've seen you've covered this before. Would you like to do this? So it's like a little bit of a mix. I don't know. Does that answer the question well?
Of course, yeah. That is something that I get asked all the time, because so many people that I've had on here, and I've talked to Kat multiple times. I've talked to Lee Gambin. I've talked to Troy Howarth, Nathaniel Thompson, all those guys. Most of them have just been prolific. That's the main thing to look at.
Oh my God,
always
that
be writing.
crew. Holy cannoli. Oh my God. Kat and Lee alone have done more. If they both retired now, nobody will ever catch up. Like they are, I like bow down. and Troy and Nathaniel too. Like these are amazing like content creators. It's so cool to just see how many different voices and people we have in this field,
Yeah. And I'm glad that it seems to be expanding a little bit, because even 8 years ago, it wouldn't be as diverse as it is now. We wouldn't have the ability to have a lot of these women stepping forward and contributing. We wouldn't have a lot of the people of color, like Sergio Mims, who just recently passed away, got to do a lot of stuff before he passed. And there's just so much that we are able to get. And really, the reason is because we're getting so many of these releases. And we have, literally hundreds of releases coming out a month, and 5 people can't cover them all anymore.
Right. Well, and I think the thing that's so cool is like, I always think it's so healthy to have, like, you should want several different types of voices and perspectives in any scene, because that's the beauty of art in general, is the way it can connect to each person. Like that's that's always why I've never understood like gatekeeping, because I'm like, well, if you really love an artist, sometimes it's kind of neat to hear different perspectives. It's like, that's one of the things about doing film. Like if you're on a film podcast, sometimes it's kind of neat if somebody doesn't like the movie you love, because even if you still, and obviously you're still going to disagree with them, but if it's civil, and it always, in my experience, usually the podcast is. Twitter and social media is different, but it's just like to see something through somebody else's eyes and lens too. And I think that's always really, really healthy. And if somebody's cool and got great ideas, heck yeah, bring them on board.
You are incredible at segues, and one of the things that we were going to be talking about tonight, I try to stress the entitlement that seems to exist in this hobby, from everything from shipping delays, which the amount of complaints I've seen today about Air 4444's newest batch going out that everybody's complaining about, to Jared at Mondo Macabro has literally gotten death threats from somebody in some other country because he gave them the tracking information and it just wasn't there yet. And if they waited a little longer, it would have got there. So
Holy shit!
Yeah.
Don't be psycho, people. Jesus.
I figured that we would talk about some of the experiences we've seen in the industry, the hobby, some of the ideas of gatekeeping and how it can be harmful to people, and what we can do to mitigate that. So, what are some examples of gatekeeping that you've seen fairly recently?
Oh boy. That's a good question, especially because like I'm a huge music fan too, and I also do music writing, and like both music and film tend to attract like, oh god, like flies to shit, like
Oh yeah.
massive gatekeeping, and it can range anywhere from you'll have somebody get into my favorite. I don't think we see this as much now, which is good, but when zombies were super big, I mean, I've in person I've heard debates over, and people like dead serious being like, oh, that's not a zombie movie,
right?
This is zombies do this or that, and it's like they're not fucking real. They're not real. You cannot apply science to zombies, and I think this is one I alluded to in email with you, is the whole like shaming kind of culture, and it can go kind of both ways. Where it's like, I mean, I know somebody that she actually was like, if you like Woody Allen's films, then I'm not talking to you, and it's like damn girl, like I mean that's the thing. If we're gonna, and this is the truth, and it's not the prettiest thing in the world, but if you're going to hold a high, like, or even a decent moral standard to everything you listen to, everything you read, everything you watch, your library of culture is going to get really crazy small, and that's the thing, is I know a lot of people like don't separate the art from the artist, but I mean, it's people like to see things very black and white in life. But the thing is, like, sometimes somebody that can do something really terrible can make something of beauty, can make something, it can do a good deed. Like one of the, like if you, even in history, like there's this horrible incident during World War II era, and I promise this is as dark as I'll get, but called the Rape of Nanking. Is awful. Like if you read anything, it's just absolutely just chilling, awful stuff. And there was a German officer that was trying to help save some of these families that were getting brutalized by the Japanese. He was technically a Nazi. Like he was, now does that mean, oh, okay, it's, is that saying you're okay with Nazis? No, of course not. Fuck Nazis. Like fuck that. Fascists in general is awful. Like no. But you know what I mean? Like it's, I'm not a Woody Allen fan, just as a filmmaker. Right. I mean, I like Casino Royale. He didn't direct it. But I love David Niven. I don't know. I mean, Annie Hall was fine. He's not my flavor. But, there's plenty of artists I love that would I let them babysit my plants?
Right.
Much less a child. Fuck no. Oh my God, no. Now, I don't get me wrong. If somebody that is currently living or active, if they do something illegal, put them in prison. I don't think there's any argument about that. Like, but as far as like shaming people, like, oh, how dare, like actually like heard somebody like rip apart a movie I love called Terayama's, as a Japanese director, Suji Terayama's, his movie Fruits of Passion, just because Kinski, like they could not get over Kinski being in it. And it's like, well, that's sad, because that movie it's art. It's beautiful. It is poetry. It is sad. And it's supposed to be sad. It's not supposed to be this erotic film. It's not erotic. It has nothing to do. I mean, like, this is the human condition. And, was Kinski, did Kinski more than likely did some really horrible, heinous shit? Yeah, it would not surprise me. I've read both versions of his book, but I love him as an artist. I think it's fascinating to me about our humanity that we have this duality in us. It doesn't mean you're excusing shitty behavior, not at all. But to be so firmly black and white, I mean, your heart's going to be broken. Like, because like there'll be like politicians that you think are the hope, but you found out, oh, one of them gave money to Big Pharma.
Yep.
And it's like, maybe don't support them, but it's like, but why don't you apply that to art? Because plenty of people turn a blind eye with other fields, but with filmmakers, and I don't know. I'm probably rambling at this point.
No,
what do you think?
If we didn't do that, I mean, if we couldn't separate it, every single film would be canceled at some point. There are so many hands that touch
Mhm.
these films. We talked about somebody's library getting minuscule. It would be down to zero. It's impossible. The number of people, unless you're talking about a film that's only been touched by 4 people, you might have a good chance to be able to watch that
Right.
one still. But pretty much nothing is in that realm anymore. But to get back to what you originally said, yeah, the shaming is getting ridiculous. People blasting people online for owning Jeepers Creepers, and
Yeah, it's so silly.
it doesn't make any
Like,
sense. Like, obviously, owning that film is not saying what the director did is okay. It's not saying
oh,
I want to donate money to his cause or anything like that. The dude's
mhm,
already been paid, and there are literally 50 plus other hands that worked on that film. They deserve to have their work seen by the world as well. It's not something
mhm.
that we cancel just because of one person that shit in the pool, basically.
Right. Yeah, no, exactly. And that, but also to go after people, I feel like a lot of that's just kind of unnecessary chest beating, because it's like
Yeah,
if you're that passionate and you want to see change in this world, which we all do, like of course, but instead of like lambasting somebody who loves a film or piece of music or book, or look at your politicians, like look at the people
yeah,
that are actually in power and demand change from where it really needs to start. Like the most offensive film in the world is still just a film. It's still at its
yeah.
core a strip of celluloid or tape or a file. You need to look at the people that are actually in charge, the 1%, your government officials, whoever's in power, your religious leaders. Um, and demand that going online and coming after somebody because they have cheaper scrapers. I mean, the world's on fire. People, come on, pick and choose your battles. you
I
know
think we had a film that came out this year that really impressed me that took this idea on. I don't know if you saw it, but Bodies, Bodies, Bodies this year was very impressive as a satire for me because it seemed like it took this Gen Z idea that was kind of changing from the millennials of like this public exercise of apathy where a lot of millennials went for years saying, I just don't care. Whatever happens, I'm so cool. I don't care. And now this public exercise of empathy where people are just outwardly trying to portray themselves as the most empathetic person. And that alone doesn't solve a damn thing. You saying that you care publicly doesn't get anybody more rights, doesn't get anybody equal coverage, doesn't get anybody any sort of equity in this world. We need to actually exercise that in a way that causes change. And
Absolutely, yeah.
yeah,
Words. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, this might sound funny as a writer, but I mean, words are vessels. Words are absolutely without action and heart and vision behind them. It's empty. Anybody can go online and say something. What are you going to do? At the end of the
right.
day, what is the action you're going to take? And I mean, and that's why writing is important, because when you write something, you're putting that and you're doing the action. But when I say writing, I mean actual, like, you are creating something. It's not just
Right.
tweeting at somebody being like, you suck,
Just
LOL.
shaking. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's no. I mean, create some art. I always said I used to. I years and years and years ago, I worked at a public access station, and a manager I had at one point had the best like tactic. If somebody complained about the content, because that's the thing, we were very much like free speech amendment, like
Right.
fighters, and she was right, because she's like, well, the First Amendment has to protect everybody, and that includes people you don't agree with. In fact, it especially a lot of
Yep.
times. But if somebody complained, oh, I'm offended, she's like, well, come on down. Why don't you make a show that you would like to see? And I've always loved that. I'm like, if somebody really, if you hate like an article you read, it made you mad, why don't you write your article? And I mean, make it good, work on it. Don't just shit out something that's just vitriol. Don't
Yeah.
contribute to the further toxic cesspool of people just, bitching. Like, you can vent. Don't bitch, vent, create, like anger is an energy, but use it wisely. That's always my thing. But yeah, and gatekeeping is also can take like that form of where somebody's like, people get a little elitist with each other.
Oh yeah.
um Even like within the tiny community of us, like, cult, esoteric film people, like, I mean, and it's just like, it's so silly. It's like, man, most people, and I've joked about this with friends of mine, somebody, me and you could be like, oh man, did you see that Jean Roland film? Did you see that's coming out? And we're like, psyched. But if we go to our day jobs, how many people in our offices or factories or restaurants or wherever are going to be like, oh, fucking A, Lips of Blood's getting 4K? Like, none of them. And if you work at that place, let me and Ryan know, okay? So we will put in our CVs ASAP. To me, it's doubly important for us to kind of take care of each other as a community and just be like, even if we disagree, that's cool. But, don't be shitty. Don't be a dick to each other. Everybody has different opinions. If somebody doesn't like Jean Roland, but they know who he is, that's fine. Not everything's going to be for everybody. I mean, I have friends that love Woody Allen's films. That's fine. I'm not going to shame them. I'm not going to be an asshole, because don't be that. It's just, art is for everybody, but no art is for everybody. Or any art that's good, at least.
Not to mention these physical releases are literally turning into educational pieces for a lot of people. These younger generations, people that are 23 buying a special edition release from Arrow on something, a lot of them have never heard of Jean Roland. They don't know what Fascination is. They don't know who Brigitte Lahaye is. They don't know any of this. They're sitting there learning, and that's where people like commentators and essay writers and these visual essays that Kat Ellinger does for imprint releases, they are so important because it provides that context to give somebody the gate that they can enter, not be kept out of, but the gate that they can enter to furthering their love of cinema. And the amount of people that have shut people down, it doesn't make any sense to me. The art being subjective alone is going to make it difficult because people get passionate about every end of the spectrum, of course. And when you come to something that is subversive on purpose, or protest cinema, or something that is made to piss people off, it's going to get worse. I mean, even something like Gaspar Noé's films, where there's scenes in there that people find difficult to watch, it's going to be somebody else's favorite movie. And I'm sure you've never seen it. Something that I say on this channel all the time is that every single film has been somebody's favorite film. No matter how shitty you think it is, you don't matter necessarily. You're not the one that movie is made for. So there's somebody out there that might worship at the ground of this release, and you just saying, no, this is terrible, I'm never going to buy it. Who are you helping?
Yeah. Well, and it's just, that's the thing. It's like, I feel like at some point it's almost like white noise.
Yeah.
When you get that many people, and it's like, they're not even, and that's the thing, you can kind of hate on something in a fun way if you're funny, if you're clever, and if you're a little cheeky. Like I remember, oh gosh, what film was it? A Paul Thomas Mike McFadden, the great late Mike, who, we love you, brother. And he did a piece on, I believe it was on Panos Cosmatos' Mandy. And he hated that movie. Now, I haven't seen Mandy, which is weird because I've written about Beyond the Black Rainbow, which that film is another ride or die for me. I love that film. But Mike's like passion and his funniness, like it wasn't just somebody just being shitty or trying to make himself look like the bigger man. It was almost sort of like what you'd see like somebody like Lester Bangs or Hunter Thompson, but you have to be that good to do that. Like that's something, like I don't advise that just anybody to do it. Because if you can't be funny or clever or cheeky with it, and also be kind of knowing that you're being a little over the top too, like I'll make a joke about Don Henley being like, one of Satan's like little, semen babies. And am I being over the top? Absolutely. Do I have friends and family that love the Eagles? Unfortunately, yes. I still love them. I'm not going to judge them. I mean, I'll be a little snarky, but snark with love. That's always what I stress with people. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be, we're not hippies. That's
what I was going to say about Mike. He would never write that piece and then say, if you like that movie, you're a piece of shit.
No. Yeah, he has the biggest heart, and it's just, that's the thing. Different things that people differently. Just don't. Yeah, this whole gatekeeping, and you're so right. Like every film, like I once had, when I was in college, I worked at a store, like a chain store that had like a music, movies, and books section. In the video rental section, there was an older gentleman that came in, and he was pissed because we did not have, I think it was either Karate Kid 3 or the next Karate Kid. I'm not joking. He was mad. He was probably on a watch list now that I'm saying this out loud, but but he actually said, well, that's okay, I'll go across the street, because at that point, and this dates the story severely, there was still a Blockbuster across the street, and I was like, we don't get commission.
Right.
It's retail on the most minimum wage level. Okay. I was like, cool, I hope they have it. I mean, he got that mad about a Karate Kid sequel. Not even 2. It was either the third one or the next. I can't remember what it was now. It was that, like, ridiculous. So, but that was obviously a film that meant a lot to him. Would I vouch for it? No, but it's not meant for me either. So
nowadays in this hobby, there's been this big debate that has cropped up multiple times in the last year about the difference between collectors and film lovers. And what I've tried to argue, why does it matter? If people are doing something they love and they're not hurting you, and they're not hurting themselves, why does that matter? If some of these people are just a fan of physical media and holding on to it, maybe they never open it, doesn't bother anything. If somebody loves all of these films or hates them all, doesn't change anything for you. I'm curious to see if on the contributor side, if you get any sense of that, because there seems to be a little bit of a tide change in regards to some of the collecting.
That's an interesting question. Like, as somebody, and I don't know if it's because as far as like other contributors, I'm probably still kind of like a baby compared to a lot of, definitely compared to all the names you mentioned. Because I'm like, I've done this many, and but I don't know if I've really noticed it on that end. I mean, just as being a film person and a film lover over the years, I mean, my favorite example, and I'm not hating, because I'm like, if you've got the funds to be able to do this much purchasing, I'm honestly a little envious, but I'm good on you, you know, like, good for you. Like, hate the game, not the player. But like when and I'm trying to remember if it was Grindhouse releasing, like when they released pieces, and there were, I think, limited edition ones that had puzzle pieces.
Yeah.
But, you know, but some people started bitching because they were buying multiple copies trying to put the puzzle together, but sometimes they keep getting the same puzzle piece. And I mean, those were not, like, these are nice releases, so they're not cheap. It's not like, I'm trying to think of a company like Crestwood, or anything like that. Like, you're it's a quality release, so you're spending quality money. Right. But I mean, it didn't make me mad. I just thought it was kind of funny. I was also like, damn, you're able to spend like over $100 on multiple copies of the same movie. I mean, yeah. With collectors, I mean, these boutique labels aren't, I mean, they're not pulling in a crap ton of money. Nobody's going to be able, nobody's buying mansions with any, with the money these labels like make realistically. So if people want to collect, even if they're not watching them, you're giving money to these companies that are help preserving and restoring key films that otherwise would be neglected. And keeping that preservation train going, but also speaking to what you had mentioned, like educating, because I think people write off younger generations, but that's bullshit, because it's every generation says the same thing. I mean, people, like, I'm technically millennial, but I'm what they call a geriatric millennial. Like, it's awful, fucking awful. Why don't you just call us like necromantic millennials or something, But I mean, every people said that about Generation X. They're saying about Generation Z, but whatever. It's the same shit.
It'll always happen.
Exactly. There's always going to be people, and I think especially now, because people, right now we live in such a weird cultural time where people stream a lot of stuff, but it's always kind of the same. Like, you hear, oh, did you binge this show or binge, it's almost like, it's kind of like a buffet approach to culture, which I'm not knocking per se. It's just interesting. It's just a little different. But I think people, most people get, if you eat the same thing, you get tired of it and you want something different. I think most people are intelligent, and I think, even if they don't know who these filmmakers are, they just need kind of the right sort of little seed planted to be like, that looks interesting.
Yeah.
I'll have to check that out. And when you can do that, it's like the coolest feeling. Like anytime, I've been able to get somebody interested in something because of an article or whatever, that's like the best feeling, because it's like, it's a man. And that's also like, and this probably sounds really pretentious, and I apologize if it does. Like, to me, that's also like a part of preservation, because you're keeping the story going. You're
Oh yeah,
keeping,
that's not pretentious at all. That's the
okay.
whole idea of archival. I mean, and that's what physical media is at the root of it. This is such a unique time, not only because of streaming, but a lot of the people that made these films are not going to be here a whole lot longer. So the fact that we're
Yeah.
able to literally speak on these films, and in many cases get them on the disc with an updated interview, or some sort of questions answered in the liner notes or something, that's not going to be available a whole lot longer on many of these films that we've all grown up with. So it's huge to take that and just archive the context, because otherwise the same thing, history will repeat itself. It's our job to learn from a lot of these actions. And if you hate Klaus Kinski and the way that he acted, make another movie and treat people better. The context behind that is the way that we can learn about it.
Absolutely. No, I love that, because I remember a guy I worked with who actually was the rare kind of cool film person. So he was like my film buddy. But he came to me one day and he's like, Heather, did you hear they canceled John Wayne? And I was like, didn't life do that?
Yes.
He's dead. What is the use of canceling people that are dead? It's too late. Like, also, people are shocked that John Wayne said something racist. Like, really?
Right.
I'd be shocked if he didn't. Like,
he had one of a few of the most public times of ridicule because of stuff like that. Yeah,
even then people were like, dude, shut up. Like, you're being racist. Like, so yeah, I mean, exactly. Do you know better? You do better. Because all we can truly affect is the present and the future. So let's, preserve the past. And like you said, learn from it. I love that, because it's, I think sometimes people tend, like, well, I say people, companies try to whitewash. It's like, I know, like, Disney, of course, obviously didn't put Song of the South on their Disney Channel. I think they should have, because, like, if you try to whitewash your own history, you are basically denying that people were treated a certain way, that were, discriminated against and hurt. And that's bullshit. Like, own up to it. Like, that's the thing. And the flip of that too, it's like, now, I mean, there are levels to things. Like, if somebody said something offensive and, but it was like something they said like 10 years ago and they've changed, everybody changes. Who's the same person 10 years ago? I do think we need to allow people the chance to grow. I mean, obviously, if you're out raping and killing people, it's a little different, but but trying to just actually change history and almost act like, we're gonna act like we didn't do that. That makes it worse. That literally makes it worse. And that, to me, is actually even more offensive. I have infinitely more respect for somebody, especially for a company like Disney. It's not going to hurt them. They have more money than God. Okay, like, they literally own almost every major property at this point. And that is the era we're also living in, where things aren't, notice they're not film series, they're properties, they're franchises. Everything kind of has, it's corporate speak, and which is weird, but it is what it is. But I mean, it wouldn't hurt Disney. If anything, I think it'd make them look good to be like, you know what, we're going to acknowledge our history that has some shady stuff in it, but we're going to acknowledge it. And you know what, hell, release that shit on Blu-ray and give the money to a charity. Give it to a nonprofit. Have part of the proceedings go to benefit, like, a great charity and nonprofit that benefits African Americans in this country, instead of just acting like it didn't happen when everybody knows it happens.
It's too kind. They would never do that.
I better be careful. The mouse can hear us.
Of course, always listening. But the archival aspect in this physical media, that's one of the important things behind this too, because with the fact that you're holding the disc, there's no censorship for that. You are holding the art in your hand. And that's why supporting a lot of these companies is so important, because it is literally preserving. Obviously, we talk about archival a lot on this channel, but preserving is something that's important. I mean, 30 Rock, that big NBC show, they just deleted a couple of episodes on streaming because they felt like it, basically, to take out some risque blackface or something like that was done in comedy. And the people that bought the Blu-ray the year before, they still have the episodes, thankfully. So it's nice to support this, because otherwise you don't know which of these will lose forever.
Exactly. I mean, I think that's the thing that makes me the most nervous about streaming right now is especially like newer stuff that hasn't had a physical media release
Yeah.
because I mean, it's weird. It's almost like we're going back to sort of like the early TV era where people would recycle tapes, they would reuse
Yep.
tapes. And so you end up losing like a lot of your archive. And I fear for that because I think preservation is important for everything. And I mean, even especially because people don't take it for granted. Like that's the thing, and I mean, there's plenty of stuff I stream. Like I stream content every day like the rest of us, but I also support physical media. I mean, obviously, I mean, the camera's kind of lower, but like right below the waist, there's like shelves of a mess. That's why you can't see it. I purposely because I need to organize it. But no, I mean, and that's the thing. Like if I use Spotify, if there's an album I listen to I don't have and I love it, I buy it. And I think that's a great way to use streaming is to use it to educate yourself and support these and really support these. Spotify's not helping any of these artists out financially, but use that tool to help you make a good decision as a listener and a consumer and support these artists. And definitely with movies, but with the whole streaming thing, I do worry. I hope that's not the case, but I mean, the thing, like things aren't on physical media. So like if a file gets deleted,
right.
That's a little, I mean, technology is great, but people are so quick to jump on new things that it kind of throws the baby out with the bathwater in terms of archive, I think. So yeah, I mean, it's something to be important of. I do think there's always I see people discuss that, which I think is hopeful. And there's always hope, obviously. But I just think about there are films that are lost that aren't even that old. There's one of my favorite filmmakers is Michael Finlay. And he made a 3D, I'm laughing because it sounds so amazing and I can't see it. I'm hoping I'll be, if I'm proven wrong and somebody digs it up, hell yes. So I'm almost kind of doing this as a test, but he made a 3D adult film called Funk. And it's I mean, what? The man that gave us The Ultimate Degenerate and Christopher Flesh made a 3D movie? Give that to me.
Hell yeah.
And that's the thing, but it was lost. I think the thing, I mean, when these companies, when people didn't even take good care of mainstream films, when you're dealing with cult films,
right.
It's a miracle. Thank God we have these boutique labels that are, and before them, and this may be not the most popular take, thank God for bootlegging, because some of these films people wouldn't have known about without bootleggers or gray market sources. I mean, even Dr. Caligari, which wasn't ideal, and I didn't get that DVD for the record. I just see it other ways, but I mean that. And think about it. That's how we have Nosferatu,
right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not advocating bootleg. If something's in print actively, get support these companies.
Of course.
But there's still a lot of films. There are films I love that I would actually are on my bucket list if they ever get out to do a commentary or an essay for. There's a 1984 film called The Black Room, which is brilliant. It's such a great movie, and there's really a muddy looking version on YouTube. I mean, I have it from a torrent. I don't even have the VHS of it, but I mean, there's nowhere to get it.
Right.
I mean, there's so many films like that still just are waiting. They're so worth the time, so I just think it's important, to get that out there, save as many of these films as we can.
Completely agreed. Gatekeeping, to get back to it, we've talked about, no, you're good. This channel is all about going off on tangents. That's like my bread and butter. I'm curious how you would respond to somebody that gatekeeps genres, because that's another thing that seems to be coming up a lot lately. For example, a filmmaker I brought up earlier, Irreversible, got announced from Indicator a year and a half or 2 years ago, whatever it was now, and it all sold out. That limited edition, long gone. Plenty of people wanted to see it, and some people look at that and say, that is filth. How can you watch a woman being treated like that? That one scene is more than enough. Everybody should not watch a movie with something like that in there. Other than the censorship argument, how do you respond to somebody that tries to gatekeep genres like that, or rape revenge, or...
Oh boy. Yeah, that's something I've been encountering probably almost since the beginning. I mean, even in high school, I had I was taking psychology, and my teacher, and she knew me when I was a baby. She knew me, and she was she found out she heard me telling somebody about the Wizard of Gore, no joke. And she was legit horrified. She was like, Heather, oh my God, how could you? How could you? Because that's the thing. I was an honor roll student. I was totally boring little Miss Goody Two Shoes that was just into some really weird, fucked up, art. I still am. That's still me to this day. Yep. And she was like, I mean, you really thought she found out I like skinned people alive and made lamps out of them or something. Like, she was like, how could you watch that? And I mean, Wizard of Gore is so much fun, and it's not so obviously not real. Like, God, but no, I mean, my thing, especially when it comes to sexism, and because that's the thing, I love exploitation films, and I love a lot of stuff, like golden age of adult, a lot of cult films, horror. These are all subgenres that have always been very easy targets for people to come or when it comes to like how like women are treated. And my argument, like with sexploitation, half of those, I would say more than half, a lot of those films, especially if you're talking like 60s and 70s, which is like the golden era, 50s too. A lot of those films, those are the only films you could see half the time if you wanted to see a woman that was strong and owned her sexuality. Like a lot of times, and even like with the roughies where it is like more like rapey, like you kind of have to approach them. They're pulp novels. They're basically sort of the cinematic version of pulp. I mean, you could also kind of realize that we lived in a culture that was so repressed that it was easier to get away with showing a woman getting raped than seeing a couple making love. And, it's like the whole Lenny Bruce quote about, it's okay if Americans are fine if you see somebody slice a woman's breast open, but if you caress it, oh, that's obscene. And, and I think people still have very much that puritanical kind of root with that. And that's the thing, is like art is a mirror. I mean, that's an old cliche, but it's true. Like, if you don't like something that's reflected in a film, whether it's Irreversible or, the Defilers or whatever, look at the society you live in. As far as how could somebody, even if you're just a horror fan, all horror fans have gotten that from people like, oh, you're sick, ew. And, but I'm like, to me, it's like, well, horror gives you a safety zone to confront fear and to confront like sometimes the fantastic. Like horror can be really fun, like when it's supernatural and you're kind of expanding and pushing the limits of imagination to all of its different sort of, like inner, psychological cortexes. You can just really have fun with that. But it also, like, say if you're afraid of spiders, you can watch a movie about spiders and kind of confront your fear in a way that's safe. If you're afraid of killers or anything, sometimes it can help you understand the people that scare you the most. Like, you could watch something like Joe Spinell in Maniac and see a performance that is so nuanced and gives you kind of an idea of like, this person's a human being. Is what they're doing right? Absolutely not. But they're still a human being. And I think that is the scariest thing of all. That somebody who's still a person, somebody you could run into on the street, talk to, have a good conversation with, could be doing something awful. It's terrifying. But it's funny because I've had some of the same people I've had come at me for loving horror over the years are people that love true crime. And I don't like true crime. I'm not against it. I'm not a shamer, as I've said, but like, I'm like, I know the world's fucked up. I don't need to know this real shit. I know too much as the but I can watch Aches and be fine. Like, movies are a way for me to kind of, deal with that. They're great coping mechanisms. And sometimes, who wants to watch some people do want to just watch Disney films and watch, safe for work stuff, or watch big budget Hollywood stuff. And that's fine. Like, honestly, a lot of the outre stuff isn't going to be like, if you're offended by Irreversible, guess what? You're not the audience for it. Gaspar Noé is not your dude. But at the same time, if it's not for you, don't go shit on somebody else's lawn about it. Like, I don't like rom-coms. I don't want to see some cutesy Meg Ryan-y, and Julia Roberts is the worst. I can't deal with her. But I'm not going to go out of my way to attack somebody online or in person and be like, oh, you like that. I might tease them a little bit, but it'll be with love. But I'm not going to just outwardly go after somebody and be like, oh, well, no, why? Why? Life is short. Like a meteor could come and kill us all right now. Is that the last thing anybody wants to be doing with their life? I would hope not. So.
Yeah, with art being reflective, a lot of these films are, reflecting a really big aspect of what we're seeing in politics right now, and that's the fact that if I don't like a movie, you shouldn't be allowed to watch it, which is the same thing we're hearing about. If I don't believe you should have that right, you should not have that right. And it doesn't make any sense to dictate lives that way. It doesn't make any sense to dictate art that way. People have different experiences. And the sad thing is that's kind of the beauty about these films themselves, because it truly gives us those doors to walk through to find these other experiences, these other cultures, these other ways of life that maybe you won't see, and could lead to you understanding why somebody would like some of these other things. A lot of these irreversible might be therapeutic for somebody who's been through something like that, or a close family member has been through something, or seeing a film where they're brutally murdered could bring a level of understanding and a level of coping for somebody who's gone through real tragedy. These films are made for a reason, and a lot of those ones that are subversive, that you are potentially offended by somebody else watching, they're there for somebody that will have real, genuine emotions from it. And to take that away from them is to take away something profound.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. Oh, man, I love that. No, that's such a great way to put that. Yeah. Well, and to be honest, kind of going back to like the whole history thing, one of the early things that got me interested, even in like my teens with like, especially like 50s and 60s, like exploitation films, because was seeing a side of that era that you're not, like, as Americans, we weren't really presented, and still really aren't presented. Like the 50s, especially, where, we're kind of presented with this very homogenized, like, apple cheeked, little, blonde tussled kids at the table, and mom's a housewife, and everything's very like clean. Yeah, very Leave It to Beaver. But then like you could you realize, no, people, there's always been something. I mean, you can go back to the 30s and 20s. And I mean, some of the earliest films from the when they started making films, the format, people were putting naked women in front. Like, that's humanity. And it's kind of like, that's the other kind of neat thing, is to be like, anytime somebody tries to be like, oh, the good old days, which by the way, that's a red flag and run.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, for so many reasons. But we have these films as proof of like, oh, I don't think it was quite like this. Because look at, we have, we can go back and watch, I mean, a lot of them are kind of more innocuous, but you can watch like Herschel Gordon Lewis's Scum of the Earth, and which has so much good dialogue. I love that movie, because we really all, damage merchandise, and it is a fire sale. So, but yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. Like, I mean, I'm offended by Forrest Gump, but I'm not going to like go out and, if somebody loves it, good. Legit good. If something makes you happy in this crazy life and it's not hurting anybody, who cares? Like, nobody ever needs to be that person that's like, oh, and especially don't gatekeep in that way where it's like, oh, you like that? No, don't ever do that. And because you will get schooled, because I actually used to have like some guys do that to me about liking heavy metal, because it's like, and especially because they see like this girl, they're super pale and got glitter or whatever, and I don't have any glitter on now, but I may at some point. And they're like, oh, you like, and it's like, oh, have you heard of Wasp? And I'm like, Blackie Lawless is awesome. Which album do you want to talk about? Or sometimes it works in the favor though. I once had like these little, like, this is when I worked retail, but these kids, like these teenage boys that were like, I heard them mention Judas Priest, and I was like, my ears perked up. I love Judas Priest. And they're like, oh, you like Judas Priest, name a song. And they're probably think I'm going to mention like, Breaking the Law, like something like really big. And I was like, Love Bites off of Defenders of the Faith. And they're like, oh, and their eyes got big. They're like, you are the goddess. Sometimes you can blow people's mind in a really positive way. But yeah, I mean, and they were kids too. I mean, if it's like some dude in his 40s, it's like, okay, Bocephus, like, you need to simmer down, okay? Or God, Eric Clapton fans are really bad too. Because Eric Clapton's terrible.
The worst that we're seeing of this is the cliche dude walking around right now, seeing people with the band T-shirt and going, "Oh yeah, name 3 songs," and it's so aggravating and so juvenile to see.
Oh my God, I know. I mean, and it's funny because I remember kids doing that when I was in high school, but it's like, yeah, they were kids in high school. Like if you're grown up, don't. It is so true. It's like, and you think if anything, like they would be excited, like to be like, oh, fucking A. This girl's got a Dead Kennedy shirt on, or this guy has a Misfit shirt on. It's so, I mean, I get excited if I see somebody wearing cool merch. I'm like, I mean, sometimes that works against you because then you'll like be like, oh man, and they end up being assholes. but you never know till you try in life. So
you brought up something a few minutes ago that I would be remiss if I didn't bring up, just in case the right people are watching. What are some of these bucket list titles? What is something that you want to work on that you haven't had a chance to?
Oh my God. That's such a wonderful question. And it's going to be one I instantly, as soon as we get done recording, my brain is going to be like, you didn't mention this. Right. You didn't mention that. And I'll be like, off the top of my head, of course, anything Sadian, like, no, I mean, we got Calgary coming out, so that's obviously, but like Cafe Flash, Night Dreams, Night Dreams 2 or 3, Party Doll Go-Go. Those would be amazing. The Black Room, definitely. Mike Mendez's Killers, which is a really great film. But oh gosh, see, you're saying that any Michael Finlay film, especially the Flash trilogy. This is such a, oh my gosh, Erg Music War. Totally. Which that did have a limited DVD release through the Warner Archive. But I would love it. I don't know if it would ever happen because of music rights, but that would be just prime for the pickings especially because like there's extra footage out there that have shown up in bootleg format. So like the elements got to be there. So that would be one. Some of these already have releases out, but like, Ray Dennis Steckler's Lemon Grove Kids Meet the Monsters. I would love to do that. The Severin put out that gorgeous set, and it is gorgeous. Like, holy, so beautiful. Subspecies, I would love to do. Razor Blade Smile. Oh God, I know. I hate, like, there's so many films. I'm like, oh goodness. Teenage Cruisers by Johnny Legend. I would love to do something for that. That's such a great movie. So it's rockabilly. It's like, I don't know if you're familiar with it. We actually Projection Booth. We did an episode on it. Yeah. It was so much fun, and that film needs to be out because it's super out of print right now. But yeah, God, I do love that movie. Jesus. Oh, I hate this. Like, I'm like, oh God, my brain is like locking up.
Let's go for an easier one then. Okay. You have not gotten to work with a lot of all of the boutique labels. Are there any certain labels that you would just absolutely be super honored to be a part of? Obviously, something like Criterion or Warner Archive notwithstanding, because a lot of people would just immediately dive if they approach you because they're so exclusive to get into some of those. But some of these other ones, I mean, we are literally so fortunate to have a plethora, like almost too many boutique labels to keep track of nowadays. Are there any that you love that you would just love to be associated with?
Oh God, any that'll have me. I don't know, because you're right. I mean, I can't even think of one that I would not want to work with. Because like, and we're having all these kind of like smaller like sub labels coming out that are really cool. Like, I know there's like Saturn's Core, which are doing like a lot of shot on video stuff. Which is a whole area. Of course, all the Bleeding Skull people, like that website's great. And those writers have been doing just a great job preserving that area and just getting to learn about that. It's been so cool. Oh, any Ken Russell movie is also on my bucket list, but especially The Devils or Tommy.
If only.
Yeah. Oh my God. I know, seriously. And I mean, there are way bigger dogs that would ever get that if it does. Hopefully when it happens, we'll put that out there. But I would love it. Boy, yeah, I mean, boy, any of them and anything. I guess right now the big one I would love to work with that I haven't worked directly with is the AFGA, the American Film Genre Archive. Because they are just doing such great work, and so many of the releases just speak to my heart. Of course, they've worked a lot with Something Weird, which, I mean, Something Weird is like it almost feels like part of my bloodstream. I mean, I remember I used to gaze at their ads and like monster magazines as a teenager, thinking, oh my God, will I ever get to see these films? And now, of course, thanks to various things like DVDs and having money, I do now, which is amazing, but not a lot, but it's there. The AFGA would be really cool. But really just we have so many people doing great work that, it'd be an honor. I think anytime anybody wants my opinion on anything, I'm always just very happy.
That's a good look at it. It's
So.
a good way to look at these things, because there's so many that it's fortunate to be involved in the industry and the hobby in any way, but the work that you're doing, it would be nice to see on some of these other releases, because you got a unique voice, a unique experience, a unique background, and the world deserves to hear more of it.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. That is such a pleasure, as my brain is still literally trying to also The World's Greatest Center, the Timothy Carey movie. Actually, there's a lady, Marisa Young, who has done so much research on him. She should get that gig before me. That's the thing. I'm not too proud, and I think a lot of us are like this, where if we get offered something and someone, we know we're not the right fit, to be like, but to try to pass that buck on, it's like, if sometimes like you'll be like, oh man, I can't think of it off the top of my head. But sometimes if you do, sometimes you can help like a brother or sister get a gig, or somebody who's gender neutral, and it's beautiful. And so that's the thing. I think a lot of that happens a lot more than people realize. It's kind of easy, I think, to just assume like, oh, drama, but and there's always drama, but there's also like a lot of just like good, just like, yeah, man, let's just all like get some great work out there and support each other. And think of all the films I'm totally forgetting that I want to cover. Oh, The Psychopath. 1972, aka Eye for an Eye. Have you seen this?
I believe at one point I did. It's been a long time.
Oh God, it's so good. That one is huge. That one is high on my bucket list. It's so good. Psychotic kids show host that goes around avenging abused children.
Oh, maybe I'm thinking of something else then.
Yes, there was a loose, I don't know if we call it a sequel, but there was an unfinished film with Joe Spinell called Mr. Rabby, and I think it was called they were trying to make it like Maniac 2 or something, but he plays the kids show host killing people, so it's obviously tied to it. But which I love Joe Spinell. Like, same. Yes, anything with Joe Spinell, like I would do. I mean, any even National Lampoon's Movie Madness. Yeah, and which is not good, but I mean, come on, it's Joe. Like, Joe Spinell is the man. Who wouldn't want to talk about Joe?
I love talking to some of these contributors and discovering who that actor is, that the moment that they hear that name, they go, okay, yeah, I want to talk about it.
Yes. Oh gosh. Yeah. Him. Timothy Carey is like a godhead to me. He's like my Elvis. Oh God, The Monkey's Head would be another one. I know Criterion did do that one, but it's only part of that box set.
Right.
And I have said way too many ridiculous things that not only have hindered any political career I've ever would have had, which I wouldn't, because politics is a pirate's lot. And I am no pirate, even though I have bought bootlegs in torrents. But I just threw myself off with that. But I've said a lot. That's the thing. It's like, have you done this? Like with your show, where you'll go, like somebody will be like, oh wow, this thing you said, and you're like, I said that, and then you think, and then you're like, oh shit, I did say that. And I'm like, that's why I'll never get Criterion, because that and also, like, I mean, I got Projection Booth to talk about water power, and I think once you go into Enema Bandit territory, that's when certain entities are just going to be like, we're gonna go with this professor over here, while Potty Math McGee over there can go in her corner and talk about Jamie Gillis films where he's cleaning out bitches. I gotta be me now. Come on, Simwa.
What's better than Jamie Gillis films, though? I mean, that's
I love Jamie. I love Jamie Gillis, and he's legit fantastic actor. So I will always go to bat for Jamie Gillis, and he is one of the actors that have legit terrified me in some of his movies too, and delighted me too. But yeah, no, there's so many. Do you have an actor like who's your like actor that makes you like go, oh my god?
Ooh, it was Jeff Bridges for a long time.
Oh, he's great.
Nowadays, I think that discovering some of the smaller films of people that have gotten a lot of recent accolades and just kind of picking apart how they got to where they are, like Toni Collette's a real big one for me. Like watching
Mhm.
her old like New Zealand films from like 96 or long before The Sixth Sense, whatever, and seeing she was that good then. Just nobody gave her the opportunity to really. There was no Hereditary in 1995 or whatever, so
Mm.
she was only able to do what she had on the page. But just watching that evolution is something that I really love to grab onto. So there's just a handful of those that, yeah, bringing up the name and I can see where they came from and where they got to now. It's, I don't know, maybe it's a sort of like a reverse empathy thing where I'm like, sort of proud of wow they were able to start the seeds of what they wanted to do then and really flourish and grow to what they are now. I just love seeing
Mhm.
that success.
Oh, no, absolutely. Yeah, she's great. I mean, it always is such a trip to me to see her and stuff now because I can still remember seeing Muriel's wedding
Yeah,
and like, wow. And I mean, she's great in that. She's great in
she's
everything. But
incredible. Yeah,
yeah, no, that's very cool. There is something I would actually love to like learn a lot more about Australian
yeah.
cinema in general because what I've seen I've loved and that also and please don't hate me for this but now the gears are going the Howling 2 because I'm a big defender of that film and also especially the music and I've done a little bit of I've done a lot of research on the music that I still need to incorporate into an article I guess but and Shock Treatment which I know Arrows put out a
Ooh,
beautiful
Shock
release
Treatment.
of
Yeah.
but if it ever get I mean if we have like 80 different editions of Evil Dead why not have one more Shock Treatment you know
Yeah.
um I love Evil Dead though, for the record, but
It's
you know what I
good. Yeah.
mean.
Yeah.
It's
It's the
like
most exploited title on home video probably ever. That or Halloween.
that, or yeah, Suspiria maybe, and I
Mm.
love Suspiria. Okay, I'm an Argento girl, but yes. Oh, Death Row Game Show. I would also love to do that, but I digress.
I completely get it. And some of those,
Yeah.
like The Howling 2, is currently out of print in the US. I could see that getting an updated release. I think Vinegar Syndrome hinted at possibly trying to get 3, 4, and 5, like 4 or 5 years ago. They were trying to do a Howling box set. They've been very quiet since then, so maybe it fell through or something. But yeah,
Mhm.
you never know. That could have been great. I can't imagine like a Howling 1 through 5 UHD box set or something coming out. That'd be
Oh,
incredible.
just take my money. Like seriously. Oh, and I'm so sorry. There's one more movie. And I don't know why this one didn't come to mind immediately because it is legit a film I love so much. Like the only thing that would be bigger than this would be anything like Sadian related would be
Right.
American Babylon by Roger Watkins.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's a huge film for me. So yeah.
Interesting. Last sort of thing. I don't know if you know any insider information or whatever, but being so close to Sadian, there's been a lot of rumors that Cafe Flesh is supposedly lost to elements, and we're probably not going to get any Blu-ray release anytime soon. Do you know anything about that? Is there any hope that we could get something restored on that? You think?
Um, I will say I hope. I think there's always hope.
Good to know.
And yes, so I don't want to say any more than that because it's probably not my place.
That makes sense.
And I don't know all the details. There are people that are way closer to the machinations of that.
Okay.
But I think there's definitely hope. Let's all knock on wood. I don't know anything 100%, but you know, but I think there's hope. So
Hope is always a good thing, and to end this, I will always just say, be kind. I mean, there's so much of the bullshit in the world that we all seem to be dealing with. I mean, it's the week of another
Mm.
high-profile tragic shooting in the U.S., and we have so much other stuff to worry about that somebody liking a movie or a genre that you don't enjoy should be the absolute least of your worries.
Absolutely. And I think that's so, yes, kindness is so needed. And I think the thing is, like, art unites us. And that's why so many of us get passionate, and we're all from, so many of us are from different backgrounds and walks of life. And it doesn't matter. We're brought together by this heart. And just, yeah, I mean, people take care. We got to take care of each other. We need to support especially our communities that are constantly getting preyed upon and attacked, like our, our minority communities, like the LGBTQ community, like the African American community, like the Hispanic community, and our lower and working class communities too. Like, we got to take care of each other. And because you know what, it's cheesy, but fuck it, we're all in this together. We truly are. So, fight the real enemy, Don Henley. I'm joking. No, the real enemy is obviously not that, but I'm trying to add a little humor to it. But seriously, I love that. Let's all definitely be kind to each other. And
that was amazing. I may just cut it off after the word Henley right there. Anyways, thank you for your time, Heather. You have been an absolutely remarkable guest. I appreciate you, and I hope to be able to have you on again someday.
Well, thank you so much. I hope I did not disappoint. So.
Not even remotely. You've been amazing. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much.